I'd like to take you through the engine room of Rambler. This is a Marlow 62. It has C18 engines, and this boat cruises nice at 20, 21 knots, tops out 24, 25. Still gets 1 mile a gallon down around 8 knots, so you can use it as a long-range trawler or you can use it as a fast motor yacht. But I just want to show you today the main components here in the engine room. First thing I'd like you to see is the engines themselves. These are called C18s, and the 18 stands for 18 liters of displacement. So it's a 6-cylinder engine. So 6 times 3 is 18. So each piston is roughly 3 liters. So really large pistons compared to your car. This is the heat exchanger. Instead of a radiator like on your car, this is titanium plates. And it has seawater running through it, and then the actual coolant that would be like in your car is running through separate passages, but the heat is being taken away by seawater rather than being taken away by air like the fan in the front of your car. Because there's no good place for a fan in the front of the boat. You can see the coolant actually goes in here, and it has an overflow bottle just like it would in your car. So the cooling system's not unlike a car or a truck, other than instead of air taking the heat away, we're going to have seawater going through this system taking it away. This big box here is actually kind of an air box. And when the air gets squished by the turbochargers, the exhaust drives the turbocharger fan blade, and that drives the intake air. And then this intake air is at 15, 20 psi, depending on how fast you're going. It can be all the way up to 30 psi. So this box is full of pressurized air, and then this pressurized air is let into the cylinder head along with the fuel injectors injecting fuel into the cylinder head, and that's what's creating your combustion. This box here is also seawater cooled, and that's one of the big maintenance items in a boat. So when this air gets squished by the turbocharger, it gets hot. Hot air doesn't make as much horsepower as cold air. So this box actually has seawater running through it in certain places to take the heat away from that air to give you more horsepower. The main engine water coming from the bottom of the boat, in this case it's a sea chest, but there's a pipe here that's basically coming from outside, and this is a 4-inch pipe of seawater. And then this little mechanism right here is called the impeller. There's actually a water pump here, and this is spinning, it's engine generated. And that is what's sucking the water in and pushing the water through the systems within the engine. Actual salt water doesn't go inside the engine, it just goes to these coolers. So I have my primary cooler here for my coolant, my cooler for my air charge from the turbochargers, and then there's also some smaller coolers as well. There's a fuel cooler and a transmission cooler. They're kind of hard to see with all this stuff. And then after the seawater takes all that heat away, it goes into that tube right there and then cools the exhaust and goes out the bottom of the boat. So pretty much all marine engines work this way. Seawater is used to take heat away from certain areas, and then the seawater is used to cool the exhaust, so that the hot exhaust, we don't have a hot tailpipe like in a car, we want the exhaust to be cool, and that water is sprayed into a chamber up there that's kind of like a shower head, and it's showering that hot exhaust gas with seawater before it hits that fiberglass tube, because that fiberglass tube would not like to be 1,000 degrees like this hot exhaust gas would be. So you have to cool it before it gets there. And that's what that little ring up there is for. Maybe you'll see it better on this side actually. Yeah, you can see this tube here going, and it's going in there. And where that blue silicone hose is, that's going over like a big shower head, if you will. The engine beds in this boat, you can see, these are carbon fiber. Pretty unique, not a lot of vessels do this. Saved a lot of weight here by using carbon fiber in different areas of the boat. As soon as you want to go fast, you really need to save weight wherever you can. This is the actual transmission here. So the engine stops there. This is the transmission. Transmission in a boat doesn't do a lot. Forward, neutral, reverse. There aren't really, you're not shifting gears. So it's a pretty simple, big, heavy thing. Rarely do we have problems with transmissions because these don't do near as much as they do in a car with 5 or 10 speeds. This is a little hydraulic pump here that's going to my stabilizer pump, and that's what is powering my stabilizer fins. This is the actual prop shaft right here. So all of that horsepower spins this shaft, it spins the propeller, it's out the bottom of the boat. What else is in here? So right here I have a battery charger. In this case, that's a battery charger for 24 volt. That is charging my thrusters and my engine batteries. And I have a big 3,500 watt inverter here, and that inverter is an inverter and a charger. And that charger actually charges my house batteries. So 2 separate systems by design. They're normally left independent, but should either one fail, they can actually be crossed so that I could use that charger to charge the other batteries that it doesn't normally charge, and vice versa. This boat has a thing called a sea chest. So instead of a whole bunch of little holes in the bottom of the boat with little strainers, you can see that the top there has a vent. That's to let air out if you're in big seas or if you just launch the boat. And then you see those valves there with the blue handles. Those are individual shutoffs. The biggest one is there for the engine. And then we have the generator and the water maker, and all the systems basically that need salt water come off of this central sea chest. So think of this as the world's biggest strainer. And then you'll see a valve here. That is feeding a tube that's going to the other side, so that if one side got blocked, that would still suck water from the other. Probably not enough to run everything, but it would keep something from running dry, and you would know it. What else do we have in here? We've got a couple of generators. There's a diesel generator right there. And there are 2 of them, and either one will run the entire boat most of the time. You can actually put the generator so that the AC system is on one generator and the house is on the other, but I find that's very rarely needed. That big fire bottle up there is called the Fireboy. That is an automatic fire extinguisher system. So when that sees a very high temperature in here, it will automatically deploy, and the chemicals in that will get rid of the oxygen, and the fire will die of no oxygen. There's also the ability to deploy that manually up the helm. A little funny box there is actually an air box. You can see it has a drain at the bottom, and there's a fan, so I can force air in and out of this room. You'll see there's some more fans over here. Don't need to run the fans all the time when the engines are on, but on a hot day going slow, it's really nice to have the fans to keep it cooler in here. When you're running fast, you'll find that it stays pretty nice in here because these engines are sucking 18 liters every other revolution. So they're big air pumps. The air doesn't really have time to get hot when you're underway and cruising pretty good. This device here, that is hydraulic pump for the davit, I believe. And what do we have over here? Over here we have a water maker. That one is 900 gallons a day. More importantly, it'll make 30 or 40 gallons an hour when you're in the Bahamas. So really a great device if you like to anchor out in the Bahamas. You run that thing for 2 hours a day, you're good for the day. We found that it's better to have a pretty big water maker so that it doesn't have to be on all the time. If you're in the Bahamas in January, and you don't need air conditioning, you want to be able to make enough water in a few hours so that you don't have to run the generator all day, because that consumes a bunch of power. Forward here, I've got a sight glass, which is really nice. So any boat will have a digital gauge, and all the digital gauges are wrong sometimes, or wrong all the time, or they just fail altogether. This is a glass sight tube, so I can actually see where the fuel is in the tank, and I can read the number. So there's no doubt what's going on there. I'm not just dependent on the sensor. Of course, I have a sensor. This boat's pretty neat. Has a lot of stainless steel instead of rubber hoses. So there's the main supply valve for the fuel for the starboard side. And you can see it's a stainless steel pipe. Comes off that manifold, it goes up, comes to this manifold, and then there's one for the engine, one for the generator, and then there's a spare. That would be for a fuel polish or something like that. And then we do the stainless steel lines anywhere we can. So we're going stainless, 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 and then we need to go to rubber at the end because we're turning all kinds of funny angles to get into these fuel filters. And I have dual fuel filters for each engine and dual fuel filters for each generator. This funny looking thing is a fuel shutoff. So from outside the boat, if I had a fire in here, I could pull this tab and it would trip that valve and shut all the fuel off to the engine. And it's a pretty neat little system. I'm going to reset it now since I just tripped it. I'm just opening that gate valve. Now it's open. Got an extra little strainer here for the water maker. I've got an air conditioning pump down here. That's the main raw water pump for the air conditioning. It has another little strainer after the sea chest as well. So we do put a couple strainers just in case the sea chest gets dirty to protect the equipment. That right there is your NIAD stabilizer system. So that's the engine-driven pump I showed you earlier, and it creates the hydraulic pressure. And then there's a computer up at the helm that says move the fin left or right, basically to keep the boat level. Works very much like ailerons in an airplane. But this is an engine-driven system, works while the boat is underway. Works very well. In this boat, that's all fuel tank. So I think I'm 2260 here. So over 2,000 gallons of fuel in one big tank. We've learned the hard way. Metal tanks are bad. They all corrode. That's an epoxy fiberglass tank. That tank is a separate tank. It is not integral to the hull, but it is shaped such that we don't waste any space. I think that tank's about 16 inches deep, and it's the full height and full width of the boat. So that's how we get so much capacity. But you can't mess that up. There are no transfer pumps. There are no valves to full width other than on or off. So you fill it up like your car and you use it. Great LED lights in here. These have come a long way. These new fans are great. The old fans were metal in a lot of boats, and now they've come up with these really nice plastic-bodied fans, and they hold up in the salt water much better than anything with metal in it. This is just a main disconnect panel, so from right here I can disconnect my engine batteries or parallel my engine batteries, my service batteries. So these are just really big switches you actually don't fool with much, but you need the ability to shut stuff on and off. All right, let's go aft. We refer to this area as the beach club. We found that a lot of the boats, below 70 feet are owner-operator a lot of the time, and it's kind of not a great use of space to have a full dedicated crew cabin, and that's all it's good for. So the idea here with the beach club was to still provide room for occasional crew, but to leave a more open space that's better for storage of your stuff. So beach chairs, fishing equipment, grandkid toys, umbrellas, all that kind of stuff that's necessary for cruising is much better stored in this big open space than a dedicated crew cabin. So what we've done here, we've got a big door to get the stuff in and out. All right, so I can get a bike down here easily. And then we've got some bunks, and we still have a fridge. We still have a head. Let's see, we've got a nice head here. But a lot of the time, there's no one living down here, and I just want some big open space. I'll show you this from the back.